What's up, man? Thanks for finally making it the 5 steps from your office.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I mean, we've been neighbors for how many years now, and you finally come by.
Did you move in 18 or 19?
Oh, I was in, I think 17 maybe. I mean, this is my 6th year here. Yeah.
Oh, no, you weren't here before us.
Oh, well, heck yeah, I was, because I looked at your spot.
Oh, you were here before
I've been here
us.
before you guys, yeah. I looked at your spot
Oh,
first.
okay. I didn't know that.
I liked your spot. I liked the conference room to the left. I really like that.
You're absolutely right. That's right. You guys had it already set up before when we got here. You're
Yeah.
right. You're right. We got here in July of 18.
Yeah. So, but I liked your spot earlier. But then when we decided to blow the wall out, I liked that front room better.
How much did you spend remodeling?
Oh, dude, way too much. It literally cost me. It was my first time I've ever done a remodel. I think like my goal was like $25,000, and it cost me like 45.
That's a lot, dude.
I know.
For something,
something I don't own.
To
I
leave
know.
it behind. That's a lot, dude.
I mean, it's one of those things where it.
That's a lot, dude.
I know it was like the flooring was like 5, the wall was like 5, so there's 10. Maybe not that much. The painting was like 5. I redid the kitchen back there. That was like literally the ugliest, nastiest thing ever. I redid that on like the last second. I was stupid back then. If I could go back, I would never even lease this office.
Well, like everybody else, you probably just had more money available to you and a higher stream of cash flow.
Well, and I also like my career was like going like that, and I never felt this yet. And so then that happened, and I was like, whoa, like
2020 happened.
I was like, whoa,
COVID happened.
What
dude.
happened?
COVID threw everything off, man. We're not normal yet.
No.
We're not normal yet, no.
Well, why don't you tell everyone, obviously you're a lawyer, but why don't you tell everyone what kind of law you for and who you are? This show is sponsored by Resilient Real Estate Group, powered by EXP. So, you're thinking about buying and selling soon? Yes, we know you probably know a realtor, your mom's best friend's cousin's neighbor, puts her face on the local shopping cart. But you know what? Our friends at Resilient Real Estate Group have helped hundreds of thousands of people sell houses over the years, and they definitely know what they're doing based on their 5-star review on Google and Zillow. So, it doesn't matter if you're looking to buy $1 million house or a fixer-upper, make sure the next time you're thinking about buying and selling real estate, you give our friends a call over at Resilient Real Estate Group. And now we're back to the show. Before we get too deep into this.
Yeah. Well, my name is William Calderon. I'm an attorney here in Riverside, originally from Los Angeles. The name of my firm is Ochoa Calderon. I do have a partner, Omar Ochoa. We practice workers' compensation. I would say that's definitely the lion's share of our practice. We have more work comp cases than any other kind of case. We handle personal injury cases, which can be anything from a car accident to just a personal tort.
Yeah.
It could be a dog bite, some kind of injury that somebody's caused on someone else. We represent plaintiffs. We're plaintiff side, so we represent the little guy. We're not representing insurance companies. We're going up to bat against insurance companies. We also handle some employment issues, discrimination under the 1964 Civil Rights Act, Title VII, which is, race, gender, creed, religion, the protected classes under federal and state law. We handle some retaliation cases, where you complain about something you have a right to complain about, or, maybe indicate that something the employer might be engaged in a practice that is not either legal or the right way of doing things. You complain about it, and then the employer retaliates against that employee.
Like let someone go?
Correct.
Yeah.
It could be a termination. It could be, a demotion, a reduction in salary, a removal of seniority.
Mm-hmm.
There could be, different acts that an employer can engage in that would give somebody a cause of action.
Yeah, I think I don't think people realize, like, when you hire a W-2 employee, they have a lot of rights that you have to be very careful with. Correct. Now that I have W-2 employers, now that I have payroll and those kind of people, like, you have to walk. So we'll try to do we're hiring right now, but I'll try to do a 90-day. We're trying to bring some people in for real estate stuff, but I'll try to do a 90-day probation as a 1099 employee as just a realtor and see if we vibe well.
Sure. And
people are like, oh, but I want to start right away. And I'm like, I agree, but when you become the W-2 employee, my levels of responsibility and how I have to handle how things work with you, or on a higher level that if you're just an independent contractor, don't have to?
Correct. So in the state of California, unless you sign an employment contract, you're an at-will employee.
Yeah.
That creates a relationship, basically. And, you don't necessarily need a reason to let an employee go. But if you do let an employee go without cause, meaning some right to terminate or justification on your end, the remedy available to that employer will certainly at least be unemployment insurance benefits.
Which that sucks too.
It does.
Like we were talking about COVID. I had like old employees that hadn't worked with me for like 6-8 months. All of a sudden I'm getting hit up for unemployment. I'm like,
Correct.
He hasn't been here in 8 months.
COVID was something else. And in terms of people filing, whether it was unemployment insurance or SDI, state disability, both of those functions are through the Employment Development Department, EDD. When you start getting those letters in the mail, you're like, gosh, who is it this time? Who filed on me now? And, employers do have to pay a tax on that.
Yeah.
So on the benefits that are issued. So, it could be expensive to hire somebody and just try them out as an employee, and that situation result in you not wanting that person, at your company anymore. You can't just let them go without having some sort of ramification.
Do you see? I mean, I know this as personally, like the not the hoops, but like the levels of what it's like to start your own business and hiring people and things like that. Like all these little laws that I'm like, I'm just trying to sell some houses and I need some help. In your cases, do you see more of your people you represent coming from small businesses or more bigger businesses when it comes to things like that?
Yeah, so I guess it depends because, we opened up in summer of 2015. And while the name of our firm right now is Ochoa Calderon, at the time, I was not licensed. I didn't have my license to practice law. So we opened up under Omar's name, and it was the law office of Omar Ochoa. And we started, pretty much from scratch. Now, one of the good things that helped us out, the positives that we had at the time, is that we were able, when we started, we brought a few files. Not a lot, but it was a few files that allowed us to have already a base upon which we can build on. But, the kind of law that we practice is contingency law. And what that means is that our attorney's fees are contingent upon us prevailing on the lawsuit in the case. We have to win a lawsuit and win a case or negotiate a settlement upon, to draw fees upon, and if we don't have that, we're not going to get paid. So whether it's personal injury or workers' compensation or any of the other employment type cases, that is not a kind of case that somebody's going to pay us a retainer for. We don't get paid up front. We get paid on the back end, which means if we have employees, every 2 weeks we got to cut a payroll check. Yeah. Which means in order for somebody in our position to start the kind of business we engage in, you have to have some money. You have to have some capital to get through 6 months to a year that you're really going to open up and not see any money coming in. Not only do you have rent to pay, but if you do have employees, right? And then early on, Omar and myself for a very short period, but we both had rent or house, mortgage payments. We had car payments to make. I certainly had kids and, medical insurance and all that is a concern, particularly with small children. So I can tell you that, when people open up shop in our industry, let's say work comp, for example, you're kind of looking at these firms and you're, whether it's on the applicant end, which is in the worker comp world, an applicant is what a plaintiff would be in a civil case. And then you have the defendants, employers and their insurance carriers. It's the same for them, basically. You have, although the defense attorneys get paid by the hour, you come into these cases and you can litigate these cases for years before you see a dime. Sometimes they'll settle pretty quick, but it won't be anything quicker than 3 to 6 months. Yeah. So, even then you have to go through a period. We opened up in the summer of 15. And I believe it wasn't until maybe early 2016, spring 2016, that we started generating a more consistent influx of cash. We started settling cases, started setting depositions. We do get paid for those depositions. So it can be challenging if, one, you don't have any cases that you have already in the base, but it's pretty much impossible if you don't have capital.
Yeah.
If you can't get through 6 months to a year, you're just not going to be able to do it. So in our industry, we do see firms open up
And
all
close
the
really
time.
quick.
And then before you know it, they're back working for somebody else because it just didn't work out. It is a very difficult thing. And I certainly consider ourselves extremely lucky to have made
it this long.
This long. Now, that's not to say that, ever since, spring of 2016, we've been good. I can tell you that after that, we actually, we do a pretty good job, to be quite honest. And that's not, sure, it's tooting my own horn. We're on a podcast, and that's what I'm here to do, right?
Hey, listen, the market shows you've been open that long, not by accident.
Yeah, we do a good job, and I can tell you a lot of our clients are by referral. We do a good job, and they refer family members and friends or, coworkers when they get hurt at work, or they get into car accidents, or they get discriminated against by an employer. So we've been able to do good, and because of that, we have a solid clientele base. But, we also have to advertise.
Yeah.
Advertising, as you know, takes money.
Yeah.
In the legal setting, we have a lot of rules in place in terms of how we can advertise. It's not as easy as putting out a commercial. There's disclaimers that go up. Every case is different. We can't guarantee outcomes, so we have to be very careful about how we advertise. Even if you're illustrating a case that you did really well on, you have to advise the public that every case is different, and the results are going to be based on the factors and the elements of that specific case only, not the case that we're advertising that we got a big payout on.
Yeah.
So there's, because of all those rules, it can be challenging. You do have those companies that for example, your 1-800 the law 2s, those aren't necessarily firms. Those are advertising agencies that basically sell contracts to attorneys. You pay for a contract, and it's not even a guaranteed contract because that's one of the legal rules. An agency can't guarantee you a case for a set sum of money. They can give you leads, and they can generate leads and calls. Isn't
it crazy how the world works? Is that the people who are not licensed can pretend they're lawyers, because 99% of society thinks they're calling lawyers at that point.
Correct.
But you're literally just calling someone to sell your information to someone else.
And not everyone knows that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like Zillow. People think that Zillow, no, they're just selling your information to someone else.
Correct.
That you're saying it's Premier Agent, but that's just the person paying them the money. Doesn't make them Premier. And
it's more of a platform for those people.
But they're able to do that, but we have so many rules.
Correct.
I have to jump through all these hoops just like you guys do with certain things, and I can get fined here, there, which I have before. But it's like, if I just didn't have my license, I could do whatever and then just sell leads to people and do whatever I want.
Correct.
That's crazy.
So, it's very expensive to get them. I can tell you that at the time that we started up, there were some other outfits out there. There was a lot going on, particularly in the workers' compensation industry. There were some bad actors out there that got themselves into trouble, and it really put a dark cloud over the entire industry. So, those of us that were trying to do things correctly and not get in trouble, you're not only faced with, significant obstacles, but, significant, economic burdens.
Yeah.
I could say, it's very risky to advertise, whether it's, advertising that you do on the radio or television or even print, to doing your own, maybe advertising through social media.
Yeah.
It's all very expensive, unless you know how to do it yourself. And if you are working in one industry, you probably don't understand
marketing
necessarily,
and all that other stuff. Yeah.
or maybe you have a general understanding, but it's not your
expertise.
It's not your expertise.
Yeah.
So we depend on these professionals in these settings, just like anybody else does. And we have to do our due diligence just like anyone else. So, like, for example, with our website company, when we were developing the website, we probably met with 10 different companies.
Yeah.
And they're all, rubbing their belly and patting their heads and tap dancing for you about what they're able to do. And you have to find someone or an entity that works with who you are. And that's where your due diligence comes into place. You have to be realistic about what you can offer folks and what you can put out there, what you're capable of handling. Because the last thing you want is to be overwhelmed, although that would be a good problem to have, but you don't want to be overwhelmed to the point where you're already more stressed out.
For sure.
I can tell you that the legal field, particularly the areas of law that we practice, employment and, accidents that either happen at work or in automobiles, they're contentious.
Yeah.
These insurance carriers are not handing out money.
For sure. They're rich for a reason.
Correct. And not only that, but they become even more wealthy by holding on to their money.
Oh yeah.
And denying your case, and maybe that 6-month period where they're fighting your case, they have money in the bank generating interest
or in other investments and other things like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, nothing's happening overnight, and no one is certainly handing out anything. You really have to position yourself in the case, properly. Otherwise, you're just not going to have a good result. For us, we've always been very conscious of this. I've been in the workers' compensation field, for example, for a little over 20 years. I won't tell you that we're the smartest attorneys out there. But in particularly workers' compensation, in my opinion, I don't think you really need the smartest attorney out there. It helps, certainly, sure. You have to have a good grasp on the law and the system and the rules. But what you really need, and I would say this is true also for personal injury and even the employment cases, you need somebody that's willing to fight for you.
Yeah.
You need somebody that's willing to look the defense attorney in the eye, or whoever else is on the phone or at the other end of your email, and just say, no, I'm not going to accept what you're offering, and I disagree with the arguments you're making. And you know what? If we can't come to an agreement, yes, I will see you in court.
Yeah.
My office is strategically located across the street from the court we file most of our cases in. That is done by design. In particularly the workers' comp area. What I see, some of the differences between the attorneys in that area of law is not necessarily that you have one that is smarter than the other. You just might have one that is willing to fight more than the other.
A little bit longer, yeah.
So, you might have attorneys that might be up there in age. Maybe they're just they're at a point in their life where they're dissatisfied with not only the practice, but maybe life in general. Who knows what the situation might be. But what I've come to find out is that the difference between, a good outcome and a bad outcome in these cases is not necessarily, that you have the smartest guy. You just got somebody that's
fighting
willing.
For you.
Willing. Somebody that's fighting for you and not taking any BS.
Yeah.
Because, some people get schmoozed.
100%.
Some people get bamboozled, by whatever arguments, the other side might be making. And if you don't have a good understanding of what the law is and what the rights are, then you're going to allow yourself to get bamboozled and your client as a result.
Yeah. What made you pick? Obviously, it's there's other more profitable, let's use that word, or easier ways to make money in law. What made you pick this type of law?
For me, in terms of workers' compensation, I come from a blue-collar family. I come from an immigrant working-class family. I was born in Los Angeles, California, but my family is from Honduras, Central America. Omar is born in California, but he comes from a Mexican family. And, we come from blue-collar folks.
Yeah.
Our circles... even though we do, swim with the sharks nowadays in attorneys, and we run in that professional circle of, lawyers, judges, doctors, professionals that assist in the industry, we're still working class folks. You know, the far majority of my friends are
not that.
You know, are
not
the
doctor.
people, you know, while I do have a lot of good friends from law school and undergrad and college and all that, you know, a lot of my good friends and the people that, you know, that I still hang out with to today are the people I grew up with.
Yeah.
You know, and those are the people that grew up in my neighborhood with me, which was a working class neighborhood. So, you know, for me personally, it's a struggle and a battle that I identify with. You know, my father went through a number of workers' comp cases while I was growing up. And I can tell you that the times that we weren't doing as well economically was mainly when my father wasn't working because he had gotten injured at work because he was a laborer.
You know I can waste no time, because I gotta keep it tight. I'm in my bag, got my eyes on the price. You know I can waste no time, because I gotta keep it tight. I'm in my bag, got my eyes on the price. You know I can waste no time, because I gotta keep it tight. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me.
And what happens with laborers is that, you know, once, you know, first of all, you're doing a labor job, right? That, you know, there's inherent risk in that within itself. But even more so once you get hurt.
Yeah.
Once you have somebody that maybe is limited in education and has to use their hands or, you know, their back, you know, so to speak, to carry out their job duties, you know, once you're already physically limited, well, in my opinion, the probability of that person hurting themselves again is that much higher. And instead of recognizing that, what the defense, you know, whether it's a self-employed insurer or an insurance carrier that is defending the claim is, you know, they like to treat these people as frauds or look at you got another workers' comp case and, you know, there you go again. Look at your client. Look how many cases they've had. Now, you know, there's a certain, you know, there's some truth to that. You do have a group of people that, you know, they file a claim and they get a little money and then, you know, a light bulb turns on and they're like, hey, you know, this can be kind of profitable. And sure, you have some of those actors, you know, those are bad actors in my opinion. And I don't think they're prevalent. You know, do they exist? Sure.
Yeah.
But are they common? I don't think so. And, you know, these are some of those, you know, those arguments, you know, semantics, you know, if you will, in terms of, you know, how people perceive folks, you know, either they're, you know, they're a career filer, you know, or in my opinion, there's somebody that is limited in what they can do. They have to work physically and use their body. And once that body begins to break down or is already injured, well, in my opinion, the likelihood that they'll get hurt again is that much higher. So, you know, it's that sort of thing that we also deal with.
Yeah. I have a buddy of mine that actually works in a warehouse now. When guys, he's does PT, so he does like physical therapy, whatever. He goes, the company realized it was cheaper for them to send them to try to get rehab than to throw them on workman's comp, then take them to thing. It's like, let's make our clients, our people got hurt. Let's fix them in-house. Then try to send, like, we'll take them off work, fix them in-house, and then not send them out.
Sure. You know, they've you know, defendants, you know, they've come up with their strategies on how they litigate and defend these cases. I'm not going to say that all of them are bad. You know, I won't even say that a considerable amount is bad. You know, look, we all have a job to do. You know, if I stood on the other side, I'm also an employer. Yeah. You know, I've had people
how's that going to work? Someone files against you, you're like, which side do I go on?
Well, you know, we're all human beings. So to answer that question, you know, I think the concerns on any employer is the pocketbook. Yeah. You know, how much am I going to have to pay? Yeah. You know, workers' comp insurance policies and premiums kind of work along the same lines as car accidents. You know, if you have an accident and it was your fault, well, guess what, buddy? Next year, you're going to pay a little more in car insurance than you did the previous year. And it might take a couple years before you can establish a good driving record again, you know, and you'll be paying more. It's the same thing for employers, you know, when they have these work comp claims, you know, their premiums are going to go up. You have some industries, construction, for example, where they have a high, likelihood of getting hurt and having these injuries. Those work comp insurance premiums are pretty pricey. They're so significant that for some businesses, they have to make business calls, and decisions. Do I continue to do business in California?
Yeah.
It's a significant consideration. And because of that consideration, even in a state like California that is, quote unquote, democratic and liberal, everybody here is pro-business. There is so much business in the state of California that even liberals are protecting business. So the work comp laws over the last 20 years in the state of California have been moving, have gotten more and more conservative, meaning more difficult for an injured worker to move forward with. They've limited the values on them. The medical control, how you get medical treatment in a California workers' comp cases is pretty structured and regulated. And because of all that, insurance carriers right now in the state of California, in my opinion, have done well. So they do fight these cases really hard, to the point where, a lot of people don't even want to move forward with it. I would say that if you are someone in that position where, you've maybe suffered a work-related injury and you're hesitant about moving forward, give us a call. Our consults are free. They're without any compromise. There's no commitment. You do not have to sign up. You can basically get a free overview of the entire industry, which is what I do. I try to educate folks, whether you're my client or whether you're a prospective client. I really try to educate folks so that they understand the system, they understand the limitations, because, once I can educate somebody on the limitations, a lot of people think, workers, for example, I use workers' comp because it's just kind of, it's the majority of our practice. But, a lot of people think that these cases, you're going to retire off of these cases. And it's like, the remedies in workers' compensation are very limited. You only have so many remedies available to you. And everyone thinks, you have certain rights that are not available. For example, everybody hears about civil cases. You hear about the remedies in a civil case. We've all heard pain and suffering.
Yeah.
In a civil case, you also have a right to a jury trial. In California, that's 12 members of your community that can sit in that juror's box, hear the case out, hear the story, each side, and maybe sympathize, empathize with the plaintiff and give that plaintiff a favorable decision. You don't have that in workers' compensation. Workers' compensation is decided by a judge who's going to tell you they're a lawyer. We use doctors in this system to kind of parcel out the values and the percentages of permanent disability and determine what kind of medical treatment somebody might need. And because of all that, one, you don't have a right to a jury trial. You don't have pain and suffering. You don't have a right to punitive damages. You got a right to temporary disability, there's 5 remedies. The first one is temporary disability. You have a right to 2/3 of your salary while a doctor certifies that you're too sick or injured to work due to that work-related injury. You have a right to the medical treatment. Any medical treatment that you get in a workers' comp case, so long as you follow the rules, and there are rules in place as to whether a case is denied and whether a case is admitted, how you get medical treatment is structured around that. But in workers' compensation, generally speaking, the medical treatment will be paid by the insurance carrier. You have a right to permanent disability. That is one of the areas where settlements come from in workers' comp. We use a medical guide that charts out the human body. The doctors have some discretion, but not a whole lot. They have some discretion to place people in, to kind of simplify it and put folks into categories or windows of value, if you will. And that's where the judge has a little bit of discretion to place you at the bottom end, the higher end, or the category within itself. But that percentage of permanent disability has a value in dollar. It will equal out to a dollar amount. If once you get released in a California workers' compensation case, the doctor has to give an opinion in regards to whether or not you have permanent work restrictions. If you have permanent work restrictions, the employer has 60 days to determine if they can accommodate those work restrictions or not. If they can, they have to accommodate for at least a year. and it's got to be at 85% of the salary, your average weekly salary that you had at the time of the injury. If they can't accommodate your work restrictions or offer you an alternate position, then they have to give you a vocational rehabilitation voucher. Right now, that voucher is worth $6,000. You can get another $5,000 through the state of California. So it's got a combined value of about $11,000. There's some value there. And that's your fourth remedy. The fifth remedy is not even available to most folks. The fifth remedy would be that should your injuries cause the injured worker's death, then the injured worker's dependents have a right to death benefits. Mm-hmm. But you have to have dependents. You have to have financial dependents in order to move forward with the claim, because otherwise the state can bring the case and the money will escheat to the state. So in order for you to have, let's say, for example, you got a single person that doesn't have any dependents and they completely get hurt at work and there's no issue that it was a work-related injury that caused the death. That person's family is not going to get any benefits unless they were a dependent.
So they have to prove that their life was based on that income.
Correct. So you have some statutory dependents that, if you can check off the boxes, you're automatically considered a dependent. Yeah. So if in that case, if that injured worker has a biological child that is theirs and is under the age of 18, that's going to be a dependent, right? And then depending on how many dependents you have will determine how much money you can get. Aside from those 5 remedies, you have a right to mileage reimbursement. You have a right to maybe out-of-pocket costs if they're justified out-of-pocket costs. Other than that, those are your 5 remedies you got available to you in a workers' compensation case. So, what I try to do is, first of all, sometimes folks just have, they're just a little mistaken about, what the values are or what they're getting themselves into. But that's the thing. It's not to dissuade anybody. Because once you do get hurt at work, would I recommend a workers' comp case on somebody? No, of course not. It's better to have your health and be physically fit to work and be able to provide for your family without limitation. That's just my preference. Because I don't think any of the values you'll get in this workers' comp system is going to,
It's not going to change your life.
It's just, it's not going to justify, any physical limitation that you might have in the future. So it's if it's at all possible, it's always better to avoid these accidents. But that's what accidents are. Sometimes, there's nothing you can do about it. And when you are in this situation, then what you need to do, and you need to shift your focus on maximizing the value, that does stand on that case. And in doing that, you need to find an attorney that is experienced and that you get a good vibe from, that you feel is going to fight for you. Because there's a lot of attorneys out there that'll take the case but won't necessarily fight for you. And that's what you want to make sure of. Now, how you can do that and guarantee it is, next to, you got to do your due diligence. It's just like anything else. You got to research. And like the example I gave where we met with 10 different companies, maybe you need to talk to a couple different lawyers and see what you get back. For us, I would encourage the viewers to Google us, Ochoa and Calderon on Google, and you can see our reviews. We worked very hard for those reviews. We have almost 5 stars. That's not a coincidence. It's not a gift. It's not that somebody did us a favor. We actually do good work. And, our clients are putting those comments out there. So, I would say that's one area. That's one thing that folks can do in trying to find an attorney is, look at Google, look at Yelp, look at the reviews that people are writing in regards to these attorneys. That's, in the last 5 years, it's how I make a lot of my decisions. I do research. I try to find reviews. If there's a product that I want out there, I go online and I try to see if anybody's bought it or not and has indicated any reviews on it. And then I'll make my own decision, because just because somebody says it doesn't mean I'm going to believe it necessarily. But, that's all of our job is to do your homework, due diligence, do your research, and find out who you're dealing with. Because the last thing you want to do is get yourself locked into an attorney that you just have no confidence in. Now, that being said, you can always switch attorneys. it's not an additional cost. The attorneys, however many you've had, basically have to split fees, and that's an issue for the attorneys to work out once the case is resolved. But, you don't want to get into the habit of getting too many attorneys because, it's going to there's a little bit of a delay in time when you switch an attorney. I got to get a file that somebody else is not really happy about having.
They don't want to pass it.
They don't want to pass it over, but they got 30 days to do it. And, most guys will probably take close to 30 days, to give it to me. So, even if you switch, it's going to take a little bit of time, and you can have some small delays in switching attorneys. So you really want to get it right the first time.
What red flags would you tell people? Obviously, reviews and all that stuff, but when you sit down with someone, is there like maybe 1 or 2 red flags that if you see this or hear this is something you should definitely stay away?
I would definitely speak to the attorney about the injury itself and what the limitations are.
Okay.
So
ask a little bit of homework question that he should know before jumping all the way in. Yeah.
Not only can you ask somebody, about the kind of injury you yourself have in terms of what their experience are or is in terms of dealing with that type of situation, but maybe where they value it and what they think they can do for you. Mm-hmm. I would certainly ask people, that when they are making a decision in terms of who to retain, they ask that attorney, why should I go with you?
Yeah.
What kind of service am I going to get with you that I'm not going to get with someone else?
Yeah.
Now, for example, if somebody asks me that, one of the services that I provide, and not everybody does this, and, sometimes I question it, when I'm getting too many calls, but I do give clients my cell phone. Mm-hmm. I ask people to text me if they have a need. If, I certainly ask my clients to call my office first, particularly when it's something that my office can help
handle.
You with.
Yeah.
But let's say, for example, if it's something that you didn't get an adequate answer on, or you have a concern, a doubt, then that's maybe a question that you need to ask me. And if you don't have an open line of communication with your attorney, I can guarantee you most attorneys don't give their cell phone numbers out to their clients. They just won't do it.
Yeah.
But I do it. I make myself available. I give them my email. I give them my cell phone and just say, look, use the number when you need to. But obviously be considerate that is my cell phone. If I sent you a letter and you have a medical appointment coming up and you misplaced the letter, don't call my cell phone to ask me what the address is.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Call my office.
Well, because that's the thing. Like, that's the hard part in our space is like, they don't, like, everyone wants to talk to me, but it's like, dude, there's so many moving parts.
Correct.
Like, my assistant sits at a computer. I pay her a very nice salary to sit in front of a computer. So when you call asking for an address, she goes, hold on a second. Here it is.
Correct.
When I'm on the road or with clients or whatever, like, I don't even know the address anyways.
Correct.
So,
it's the same with us. It's a team effort.
Yeah.
But I would say there are some questions that should be left for the attorney,
100%.
Just like with the real estate agent.
I think too many people rely on their assistant way too much in our space. When like me and my assistant have a rule. I'll never answer an easy question. I never send an email. I will not send an easy email. I will not make an easy phone call, but you'll never make a hard phone call.
Sure.
Like for me, the hard. Adrian, your light went out. The big light. What is this, amateur hour? You're embarrassing me. We'll fix it. But I think that's our rule. It's like, I'll never make an easy call and you never make a hard call because like that's the reason I'm making the most money.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And the client wants to hear from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
is crazy like that. So for you said that, obviously you guys wait there's so much time that goes in before you get paid. So are you guys really filtering the people that come in? Like, what do you are there times you turn people down because you're like, dude, I just don't know if this is a legit case?
Of course.
You know what I mean? I can't spend 9 months to know that this case is nothing.
Of course. There's got to be, there's got to be a viable cause of action. And not only that, but as an attorney, there's a duty upon us to not bring forward implausible causes of action.
Yeah.
You have to have a reasonable shot of prevailing. Otherwise, you can get, let's say I file a case that had no shot of winning and I was just completely wrong, but I did it just to try to get some money. Well, that defendant is going to have to defend the claim.
Yeah.
And they're going to probably have to pay a lawyer to defend the claim.
Mm-hmm.
And if I open up cases that are unreasonable, there's remedies available for that. They can come back and ask for cause.
Oh, really?
And you can get in trouble. So as an attorney within the state of California, practicing in the state of California, we're only going to take cases that we believe in. If I don't feel that you have a case, or let's say it's a case that's not going to give you any permanent disability or a need for medical treatment, basically a settlement, then we will reject the cases, and we reject cases.
It's funny. I feel like we do the same thing. People get upset at me sometimes, and I'm like, listen, if you only make $1,500 a month and you have no money in savings, and I don't see you able to buy a house anytime soon, why am I going to drive around and show you houses? Like, I can't. Like, there's no outcome. There's no financial outcome.
Correct.
Which sucks. Like, I mean, it's hard to say that, but at the end of the day, like, we have to pay for everything.
Correct.
You know I can waste no time, cause I gotta keep it tight. I'm in my bag, got my eyes on the price. You know I can waste no time, cause I gotta keep it tight. I'm in my bag, got my eyes on the price. You know I can waste no time, cause I gotta keep it tight. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me.
Correct.
We have to pay for our employees and our time. If I'm wasting on someone that I know is not going to be able to bring income into the company, it's costing the company money.
And, the civil cases are even more important for that.
Yeah.
Because we do have to put up the cost for those. So if we do have to file a complaint, file a lawsuit, if we have to subpoena records, if we have to depose.
You're eating all that whole cost.
If we have to depose people. Let's say the defendant deposes somebody and I want a copy of the transcript, which I must have. I mean, those things sometimes go up, are upwards of $700, $800
Really?
just for a transcript.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Dang.
So, on the civil cases, even more stringent rules in terms of who we're taking. It's got to, again, not only do we have these duties placed upon us by the bar to not bring forward implausible cases, but,
just to stay in business.
As a business decision, you don't want to make decisions that are going to cost you money that you're not going to be able to recover. Nobody's in the business of throwing money out or losing money.
I always love when people say, I got into real estate to help people, then do it for free.
Yeah.
Let me know how long you stay in there for.
I can sit here, Adam, and tell you that I have all these altruistic notions as to why I became an attorney, and that, I'm fighting for a cause, and and that all might be true. There might be, certain levels of truth behind it. And I'll look you in the eye and tell you that
for sure
there's some truth there.
I agree.
But, I also got kids and a wife and a family and a business
and
to
employees,
run.
and they have families.
And I got to feed myself. I have to eat, So, it's also a business.
And I don't think people realize most people aren't able to get back until they make all their money, right?
Yeah.
Like all the people that have buildings named after them, they made a lot of money. Correct. And then everyone talks about Bill Gates. He made a lot of money before he started giving money back.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so if I don't ever get to the point where I make a lot of money, I won't be able to give anything back.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be in a position to be able to give it away,
Do you think that's why a lot of lawyers don't stay in business? Because right when they open, they start taking too many cases because maybe they don't have the caseload, and then because they're kind of maybe a little bit desperate, and then they realize oh shit, I'm not making any money off of this stuff, and these cases aren't able to be won, and then they...
I don't think there's ever one sole issue. I mean, there could probably be a predominant issue for folks, but, I would probably say it's a lot of reasons. There's, when did you open up?
Yeah.
What did the economy, not only in the state look like, but what did the economy in the nation look like, right? So I can tell you that when we opened up in 2015, the economy was pretty strong. I remember in 2007, 2008, this was before we opened up our own office. I was working for someone else. But in 2007 and 2008, we had a boom in the work comp industry. And the reason being is because the national economy, went down. We lost a lot of manufacturing jobs in the state of California. I mean, there were numerous manufacturers that either moved out of state, closed down completely, or took their business international. So we had a lot of, what I found is that we had an increase in cases at that time because people started getting laid off left and right. Now, there was a very small group of those folks that got laid off. They were post-termination cases that weren't viable, and they should have lost because they didn't file the case until they got terminated. They got laid off, basically, is what it had. So you had some of the large companies doing large layoffs. But then you also had a large group of folks, of workers, who had documented work-related injuries. So let's say I had a 20-year employee who 2 years ago hurt his hand or his back or just injured himself, got sent out to the company doctor, had some treatment, but because that person knew that if they filed a claim, they were going to go on reduced benefits and that sort of thing, and a deduction in income that they couldn't afford, they would just go back to work and they would do whatever they had to do to work. So, you got folks wearing back braces, folks in knee braces, folks that are medicating to get through work because they got a family to support.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to file.
Because if you're living check to check and all of a sudden you go to 2/3,
correct,
you don't make it.
And it always doesn't start up immediately. It takes a little bit, and the bills don't stop, and all you need is to get backed up a couple weeks before you're in a panic.
Yeah.
But you had a large group of folks that had these documented injuries, and even though it was a layoff, because they had documented injuries, those injuries were good.
Yeah.
So we saw an increase in how many claims during that time, and it was a great time for the folks on my end that were representing injured workers. I would even say for the defense attorneys as well, because if we're creating work, then
they're working,
then they're working as well. It kind of, it's the yin
which
and
is
yang.
crazy because in that moment in time, the world was melting down, and that's one of my mentors is a guy named Brian Lamb, big time lawyer, DC, represented the NBA refs NBA refs, and then he was also the MLB umpires. And I've talked to him about that. He's like, dude, when 2007, 8, 9, 10, he goes, it's like it didn't happen to us because we worked for the NBA. Like, the world didn't stop for us. Like,
correct,
all my buddies, we lived in a bubble. We all worked for these big law firms with these big corporations that they didn't fail, and we all made our money, and it was like we never went through it.
Sure.
Because they were in a space and in a protected little bubble.
Correct.
That wasn't affected by the economy.
Yep. And if anything, people at home are not working or even watching more
so it's more money,
more revenue for them because they got higher viewership. It's kind of a similar situation in that sense for us during that time, in that there was just a boom in the industry. There were a lot of claims. There was a lot of work. And while people were, complaining about not having this work, we were generating quite a bit. So, in that sense, it was a good time. But I can tell you that when COVID came around and the consequences of that, not so much.
Yeah.
Everybody was at home. And if most people are at home, that means they're not at work getting hurt. And if they're not at work getting hurt, they're not filing.
And they're not even leaving the house. You're not even getting car accidents or nothing.
Same thing. Yeah. Car accidents went down. Hell, the insurance company started giving people refunds because there were so fewer claims out there. So, and because these are contingent fee industries, we started seeing the consequences of 2020. 2021, 2022, and now. Yeah. We're still feeling it.
Yeah,
things are starting to get back to normal, but not quite, not just yet. I mean, I'm hopeful, I'm encouraged, and I see some good things happening right now. But I don't think that we're completely out of the woods just yet.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of room
if a big layoff recession happened, that'd be good for you.
Unfortunately, what is sometimes bad for the economy and for folks, like a work injury, that's not necessarily good for them personally, but sure, that's how we make our money. It's kind of like sick people.
Yeah.
Sick people are good for doctors in the medical industry because if you're sick, they're making money.
100%.
If you're healthy, they're not making money, which is something to think about.
I never. That's the thing. That's
we're talking about conspiracy theory.
That's a whole other conspiracy theory to go down. I mean, shoot.
We won't go down that rabbit hole.
But it is interesting. I never saw a hospital act like a business more than when my grandpa got sick. Test. Let's redo a test.
Correct.
The instant he goes, you know what? Doctor tells you got 2 to 6 weeks to live. We're gonna go on. I'm going on hospice. I'm just gonna shut it down. All right, we gotta get him out. Move him on. I mean, like literally, it was like that same day. They're like, all right, get him out. Like you gotta get him to and it was like, whoa. I'm like, we're not ready. And it's like, hey, like I started realizing like that was the moment the bill stopped. Like they're like, no more treatments, no more nothing. Like this room needs to make us a certain amount of money.
Correct.
And instantly it was like business mode. And I was like, whoa.
They need residents, almost like a hotel.
Well, it's interesting because when COVID was happening, and I don't think people knew this, it's like, oh, the ICU is maxed out. ICU is like, hospitals are very profitable. They're almost always maxed out. They can't have too many vacancies.
By design.
Exactly, by design. They can't have vacancies.
Correct.
Because then it's just wasted space. They're not going to build a hospital so big that it's never full. They want it just on the verge of being full at all times because that's profitable.
You can have multiple days of podcasts on that topic.
Dude.
Medical treatment and medicine, the medical field in this country is just, it's something that needs to be fixed and improved on. Me personally, I'd like to see some social medical treatment, kind of something, like along the lines of France and Canada, where as soon as you start working, they start taking the money out. Just kind of like Medicare, SDI, and all that sort of thing. Yeah. They force folks to pay into those benefits for the sake of the majority. Yeah. Now, we live in the U.S. and everybody's big on personal choice and your own decision making, but not everything here is a personal choice. There's a lot of things that the government puts on us because it has to be done for the collective well-being of the country. And
I think that most people it would benefit, and the issue is that it would benefit more people. Listen, if you still want to go to the most expensive doctor because you have the money and pay for the insurance, great. I just don't think you should go bankrupt to have healthcare taken care. Like even I went to the dentist today. Dude, it was like $350 later, and they're like, yeah, you need to come back for this and this. I'm like, dude, you want me to spend $1,000 on my teeth in a week? Like, I mean, luckily we can make that move, but I assume there's a handful of people that cannot.
And you shouldn't have to.
And then
just because you can, you shouldn't have to.
And then so then it's like, okay, now I'm at a choice. Like, okay, do I take my medication and then let's talk about medication. Do I buy my insulin that's 10 times or 50 times or whatever the price is, or do I invest money in this? Or it's like then you wonder why it's so hard to get above the break line. Sure.
Absolutely right. And, hopefully that'll change at some point, man. It's I can tell you early on in my career, certainly not making as much, and, probably had somewhat of a decent salary, but it really wasn't enough for me to be able to afford medical insurance. Mm-hmm. But I made too much to get,
agree.
What is the Medi-Cal and all that stuff. And then you have folks, that haven't worked a day in this country whatsoever or haven't put into the system, and they can get it. Mm-hmm. Now, I can understand why the hospitals do it, because otherwise it's a burden on the hospitals, and they end up having to give up a lot of medical treatment that they don't get paid for. And that's the issue with them, is that they end up having to give, they say that the system is being burdened, but what it really is that they got to give up a lot of free service that they won't see a dime on. So the rest of us have to kind of participate in this larger scheme that they got going on, and I just don't think it's fair.
I just think it's difficult. I don't think people understand. I don't think employees understand when business owners who they think are making tons of money, or even like for you, like, oh, he's a lawyer, he can afford it. But what they don't understand is like, okay, well, it's this, and then it's this, and then it's 40% tax rate, and then it's employer insurance, and then this and that, and then it's like. What they don't understand is then that pulls competition out of the market because it's so hard. Correct. And then the big dogs keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then that takes away competition.
Which is not good for the consumer.
Competition is the best thing for the consumer.
That's why we have antitrust laws.
Exactly. And so that is the problem, is that it's so, like, when you make it so hard for the little guy, or even the guy that's doing just good enough. Yeah. And then we have a hiccup, like COVID happens, or someone gets sick in the family, or hurt, or some financial thing happens, and then it's like, crap, like I'm back down to zero, and I gotta you know.
Yeah. No, it's we are living in a challenging time right now. Who you vote for is very important.
Yeah.
You know, folks need to participate in the system that we have established.
I think you gotta just pay attention a little bit more and hear, and I think you need to listen to multiple sides with an open mind.
Correct.
I think the open mind thing is like something a line I use on a lot of people when they disagree with me. I always say, if the same thing happened to me, I'd probably feel the same way you do, but it didn't happen to me. That's why I don't feel that way. And that's why the way you feel your way.
Perspective is
It's perspective. So let me hear your perspective on why you feel that way. Not just I'm right, you're wrong. Let me try to see if I can wrap my head around why you think that way. And if I could put myself in your seat, would I agree with that or not?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
that's
totally.
and it's so hard to like get people to understand that, but it's like there's some things that I just don't care about because it doesn't affect me. So it's like it's hard to I can't have a horse in every race.
Sure. You know, we're living through a tumultuous time right now, particularly politically in the
Yeah.
nation. You know, most folks are divided, stand on one side of the line. We have to stop speaking past each other, start speaking to each other. Listen, you know, I think if we just listened, you know, to the other side a little bit and just kind of heard their gripe, heard their concern, you know, heard what they want.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's room for compromise.
I think the worst part about it is I think most people are pretty close to the middle,
Yes.
but the loudest people are on both sides.
Correct.
And it's like, I right before you, I had a podcast with a guy who's a lobbyist for real estate. And he was saying, he's like, dude, other than LA and San Francisco, the Inland Empire, Fresno, like, we kind of got this figured out. The politicians out here are pretty moderate. No one really knows who they are. They're kind of boring. You're able to speak your point, even though they're mostly Democrats. He goes, the problem is you go to LA and San Francisco, and they're so powerful in the state that they try to push the things that they want in that. And it's like, it's not working there. Let's just do it. Like, don't push it on to us because it's not working there. So it's probably not going to work here.
It's the same thing right now with
And
the far left or the far right.
Exactly what I'm saying.
Most of us are somewhere in the middle. I can tell you that I'm in the middle.
Yeah.
You know, there's some things on both ends that I dislike. There's some things on both sides that I do like.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, I'm really at a point, you know, with everything, particularly with, I would say, maybe the last 3 presidencies, that, you know, I'm just sick of the fighting.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's room for compromise. You know,
But that's the problem is DC's so jammed up that nothing's ever going to get passed. And that's the problem is that, but that's what they want. Let's be honest. They don't want nothing moving.
You know, I don't know what the solution is, you know, to be quite honest. We're living through a difficult time, but, you know, I think more of us just need to participate.
Mm-hmm.
We need to really research the issues and make educated decisions based on facts, science, even our own history, as opposed to making decisions, you know, through our emotions. A lot of the arguments you hear today are emotional arguments,
100%.
you know, and, you know, I found in law school that the well-reasoned argument is heard more than the emotional cry and plea, no matter how loud.
Do you struggle with that in court? Because most people are making emotional decisions that when you're sitting with the person you're representing, it's like, hey, we have to stick to the facts. Like the facts are what are going to push the case forward.
Yeah, so we definitely come across that. You know, for example, let's say with the workers' compensation cases, a lot of folks think that part of the value is based on how long they've been out of work. Some people even want to be out of work because they think that they're like
more power to
they
it.
got like some savings account that they're accumulating with each day that they don't work, and it's like that has absolutely nothing to do with the value of the settlement. Like, you know, if they owe you benefits and they weren't paid, sure, that's an area I can negotiate value for, but it's simply not just because you're out of work and, you know, you missed out on making this X amount of money to a certain extent by choice because you didn't get back out there, right?
Yeah.
And so, again, it kind of goes back to one of the things that I do is that I really try to educate folks.
Yeah.
I try to educate folks from the beginning of the case. And during those mid-case conversations, they will say, hey, I remember you told me this at the beginning.
Yeah.
Talk about that again, and then it's easier for them to understand. And then they're like, you know, okay, that makes sense, as opposed to, just having to go through, maybe that education at each level or each time you communicate. So again, because I do deal with that, people's misperceptions about not only what the remedies are to them in a certain industry or a certain, kind of case, because maybe they've heard, about, the jury trial and the pain and suffering and, on the news or a movie,
The guy who spilled McDonald's coffee on because he was sneaking into a movie theater back in the day and he made all these millions of dollars. And,
a lot of people think that, so I have to educate them, One of the other misconceptions, people think that just because, an employer lets somebody go without having cause for it, is like that they got wrongfully discriminated against or wrongfully terminated. No, California's at-will employment. Either side, short of breaking the law, again, that's a big one, short of breaking the law. They cannot do something, you can't break the law, and that's the basis for your decision. But let's just say, Adam works for William, and one day Adam comes to work for William without a contract, right? There's no employment contract that we negotiated, so you're an at-will employee. If that day I just determined that, I don't need Adam anymore, if I don't have a good reason for letting Adam go, Adam's going to have unemployment as a remedy. However, if Adam can prove that my true motivation for letting Adam go was something illegal, something sinister, I found out that, the night before, Adam likes to partake in a certain sect of society that I don't that I don't agree with, and that's the reason. Well, the burden is on
me to prove
the plaintiff to prove that, which is a very difficult thing. I mean, think about that. Unless you have the employer saying, screaming some epithet, racial epithet, or a derogatory term at you. How are you really going to prove when all they did was say, look, I don't need you anymore, you're laid off or you're terminated for whatever reason? How are you going to prove that the real motive was something illegal, like it was based on your race when they hired you in the first place, let's say, for example, right? Or, that they found out you're a cross-dresser. I don't know, something,
You know I can waste no time, because I got to keep it tight. I'm in my bag, got my eyes on the price. You know I can waste no time, because I got to keep it tight. I'm in my bag, got my eyes on the price. You know I can waste no time, because I got to keep it tight. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me.
And it's hard too, because when you're a small business, sometimes you just don't have the work anymore. Like when COVID happened, I was like, I had to let someone go. I was like, dude, we can't leave. We can't show houses anymore. Correct. I don't need you anymore. And so I have to let you go. I
mean, when COVID first came around in March of 2020, the courts closed down completely for 2 months. It wasn't until May that we got back. And then we got back on a telephonic system, and then that created all sorts of issues. And after those 2 months, when we finally got back in the court, well, we kept working, so we kept putting cases onto calendar. And then what do you think happened with all those 2 months of cases that were on calendar? It created such a backlog for us that it really took, I want to say it probably took about 2 years to get rid of that backlog. Maybe at least a year. I would say
we had to deal with some probates during that time. We were in escrow, someone passed away, and they're like, "We're so backlogged." I'm like, "We have this is a reverse mortgage. Like, if we do not get this solved, this house is gonna be taken. Like, we can't let this house be somehow someone jumped this in."
I can tell you that the second half of 2020 for us and most of 2021 was high litigation. We had so many cases set for trial, and we're doing remote trials and video trials.
And that's so different.
And it's different. All of us had to adapt and learn, new technologies and new ways of doing things. There's a lot of things that were implemented that I don't think will go back to normal.
Really?
But there is a big push right now to get everybody back in person, back in the court. Governor Newsom just did away with some of the emergency orders. Like, for example, on some of our settlement documents, we need witnesses. They did away with that during COVID. They've reinstated that again. They want wet signatures again as
No
opposed
more.
to, the DocuSign. We were using the DocuSign,
slinging that thing out,
technologies
yeah.
like real estate,
Yeah.
and they were great for us, to be quite honest. Even for the signups. Like,
Yeah.
let's say, for example, I sign a case up. I used to pay somebody to drive to that person's house because you want to sign up people as fast as possible, right? Before they get another call or they make another call or they go elsewhere, we want to sign them up. So I would send somebody directly to them. Well, COVID did away with that. And, rather than pay that person on a per client sign up base, we had DocuSign and we paid on a monthly with so many
$300 a month, $300 for the year,
whatever it was. So there were some things that were still great. We still use it, in a limited capacity, but they are pushing us more and more for actual wet signatures. We have to have witnesses again. You have to have a good reason to not conduct a trial in person nowadays. The judge will make the call. And they can deny it, and if that is the case, you can't do a virtual trial. You got to get in the court.
Go in.
And they want everybody back in. And, one of the judges told me, it was kind of just a very human, basic principle. If we have to be here, then you guys have to be here.
For sure.
And even though a lot of us were kicking and moaning, they've been getting everybody back. Now, me personally, I've been back. I did work from home for about a year, but I've been back in the office since 2021 sometime. So, I'm more. I'm gonna say I'm more. I can get more done by being present in my office without having to use the relay system. Because right now we're server based, although we're switching to cloud based, so that won't be such an issue for us anymore. But during those times, it was just having to connect the relay with the server and all that, and then if you have a server issue, man, everybody's down.
And then everyone's blown, and then it's just the world stops.
And the phones don't.
They don't. No.
Particularly Monday mornings when everybody's had all weekend.
Rolling,
think about what
chewing on stuff. Yeah, they're just waiting. So, what advice would you give someone who's going through law school, who's on a fence and maybe trying to figure out which direction to go in law? What advice would you give them? The law is a very difficult industry. It's not easy work. It's very difficult work, to be quite honest. It's always stressful. Can you make a good living? Yeah, of course. But, it doesn't come without a lot of hard work. So, if you believe that you do have the character to be an attorney and the aptitude, obviously, because you are going to have to pass the bar, graduate law school, get through moral character and all that sort of thing. Find an area of law, particularly while you're in law school, maybe try to get different kind of jobs so that you can get a different kind of taste of, what different areas of law might bring you. For example, there's some areas of law that you can make a lot of money, but those are typically really stressful, high litigated industries. And you got other areas where, public interest, where you're, working at, some nonprofit agency that helps, battered women, so to speak, where you might not be making a lot of money, but, you go home feeling so good about the work. And you're shutting off at 5.
And the energy that you're putting out in the world. And it's a 9-to-5 gig as opposed to a 7-to-7 or, a 12-hour gig daily. You really want to, my advice would be is, try to get, some experience in different areas of law so that you can figure out what works for you, what you really want to do. I can give you my example. While I was in law school, I went to USC, which was very competitive. You kind of saw, the folks that were going to become the shark lawyers, the folks that were going to do public interest, those of us that were just kind of lost in between and not really knowing what we wanted to do, didn't have a job set up and that sort of thing. And, you're just kind of going through academia to get to your profession. Find something that moves you. If money moves you, then money moves you.
Yeah,
it's not.
Nothing wrong with that.
In my opinion, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with people that want to make money, and don't necessarily have some,
higher moral standard.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, if you do your work for your client, be good at what you're doing, and you're going to do okay. If you want to do public interest and save the world one, battered, wife at a time, or, one abused person at a time, then hey, do that, you know, but try to get enough experience so, you can get across, reference of the different areas of law to determine what it is you might want to do. I can tell you that when I was going through that process, I learned very quickly that I did not want to go to one of those large downtown firms. It was just too stressful. It would make me sick, and the competition behind it was just a little too much for me. I would say while you're in law school is very difficult. And particularly if you're somebody like me with my kind of background where you're first generation. Man, I was first generation college, let alone first generation law school, right? My parents stopped helping me with homework a long time ago, let's just say, and they did become, counselors of sorts in terms of, trying to help guide me morally and not necessarily professionally, but personally. Take advantage of whatever resources your school or your insurance may be able to provide. I can tell you that in my experience, it was stressful for me. I didn't really have anybody guiding me. I didn't have the resources some of those kids had. And I certainly didn't have like that mentor type professional that could help me in that sense. And I had some character flaws in that I didn't seek it either, knowing that I needed some help. So, advice, don't be too proud. If you're feeling funky, deal with it. Get some help, find the resources that are available out there. And there's a lot more out there today than when I was going to school, and take advantage of them. But you really got to be doing something that makes you happy. This area, this profession is very difficult. And if you don't enjoy it, you're going to have an expiration date. And you're going to be you're going to be looking for an out. And, if you've had to incur the kind of loans that I had to incur to go to law school, that's not something you want to do, to have to choose a different career.
Agree.
Once you've made that decision, you want to make sure that you succeed. And, the people that I see succeed are people that are well balanced emotionally, physically, mentally. Being a lawyer is the kind of job, and I would put doctors and judges in the same kind of category. Fast paced. You got people relying on you, sometimes to the point where it's life and death, your work could really be the difference in someone's well-being and the well-being of their family and their kids and their spouse and whoever else. You want to be happy with what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to suck and you're going to be miserable.
I love it.
And, I don't think anybody goes to law school to be a bad attorney.
Agreed.
You want to be a good attorney, and in order to be that, I think you have to be happy.
Love it. What's the best way people get a hold of you?
You can find us on the web at www.ochoacalderon.com. You can reach us at the office at 951-901-4444. Or if you do have a case, I'll give you my email for now. It's Will, W-I-L-L, at OchoaCalderon.com. But if you go to Google and Google us, Ochoa and Calderon, or even my name, William Calderon or Omar Ochoa, you'll find us.
Love it, dude. Love it. Appreciate it. Make sure you guys go reach out to them if you need help. I've known these guys for years, and I've never seen people more professional right next door to us. And I see this guy day in and day out going to court, and if you're looking for someone to fight and to show up every single day, these are the guys for you. So you definitely got to do that. So I appreciate you guys following us, watching us, sharing us, all those great things. If you guys need anything, please reach out to them. Until next time, guys, peace.